Most writers edit the hard way, but today I want to share with you a strategy that will simplify the process and save you a lot of time and frustration. By the way, my name is Brandon McNulty. I'm the author of Bad Parts, also the author of Entry Wounds, and welcome to my writing channel. If you follow this channel, you know that every now and then I do a video on the editing process and how to make it easier. And this is because I'm constantly trying out different editing strategies with my own novels. And some things work better than others. Today I want to share with you a technique that I call slingshot editing. Why do I call it that? Well, I'll explain later on in the video, but for right now, let's take a look at basic 3-act structure. Most stories can be broken down into 3 acts. Act 1 is the first 25% of your story, and this is where you introduce the characters, their flaws, their problems, their everyday lives, and the journey that they're about to go on. Act 1 usually ends with the character entering into a new world or a situation that turns their life upside down. Act 2 is the next 50% of your story, but I like to break it down into 2 separate quarters for simplicity. We'll call them Act 2A and Act 2B. In 2A, your protagonist is in a reactive phase. They're reacting to the new situation that they're in. They might be running for their lives, or trying to fit in, or struggling to adjust to their new world. But they're in this reactive state. Then, at the middle of your story, the 50% mark, your hero learns an important piece of information. And this shifts your hero's attitude and sends them into Act 2B, which is the attack phase. Instead of being reactive, they are now going on the attack. And at this stage, the hero proactively works towards solving their problems and/or defeating the villain. And then we reach Act 3. This is the last 25% of your story, and this is where we get a final confrontation between the hero and the villain. A battle is fought, and there is a decisive ending, meaning that somebody wins and somebody loses. And that's 3-act structure in a nutshell. You have those 3 acts, 1, 2, and 3. Anyway, now that you have a basic understanding of 3-act structure, let's talk about editing. Most writers approach editing like this. They will finish their final draft, they'll write the words "the end" on the last page, and then they'll go all the way back to the beginning of the story and start their editing there, working from page 1 all the way to the end. And this works for some people, but I have 3 major problems with it. The first problem is that it's intimidating to edit an entire novel from start to finish. When you start at page 1, you have to stare up at a mountain. I'd rather climb a few steep hills than climb the entire mountain outright. That's just easier to me. The second problem I have with it is that the beginning of your story is usually the easiest section to edit because things are relatively stable in this section of the story. Later on, however, that's when things get wild, complex, and sometimes sloppy. I don't know about you, but for me, it makes sense to edit the sloppy parts first. Fix them up, get them out of the way, and take care of them while you have the most energy and enthusiasm about the editing process. And then the third problem that I have is that you may need to rewrite Act 1 after you edit the later parts of your story. This is because when you edit the events in Act 2 and 3, sometimes you need to go back to Act 1 in order to set up those events properly. So if you start at the beginning and you start your editing there and you spend time polishing up Act 1, later on you may find that all that effort you spent with all that polishing, that was a waste because now you have to rewrite those early chapters again just to set up Acts 2 and 3. And that can waste a lot of valuable time, it could get you frustrated, and rather than starting at page 1 and editing all the way to the end, what I like to do is what I call the slingshot editing strategy. And here's how it works. It solves these problems I mentioned because instead of starting the editing process at the first word of your story, you're going to start at the beginning of Act 3. You're going to edit the last 25% of your story first. Instead of tackling the entire mountain, you're going to climb a smaller hill, and you're going to get a sense of accomplishment which will boost your confidence. That's going to be huge for you. And by starting with Act 3, you're also going to edit what will likely be the sloppiest parts of your story right up front. You're going to focus your energy on what needs the most fixing. And then, best of all, If you start with Act 3, you will finalize the end of your story, which means you know exactly how the story ends and you know exactly how Acts 1 and 2 need to set up the ending. It's a lot easier to edit a book when the destination is set in stone. And if you do this correctly, if you do this technique correctly, you will save yourself tons of rewrites and revisions. Anyway, once you're done editing Act 3, pull back to the 50% mark and edit Act 2B. Once you're done with that, pull back to the 25% mark and edit Act 2A. Then, finally, you'll start at the very beginning and you'll edit Act 1. And when you finish Act 1, you're going to continue through the rest of your story to make sure that everything works, everything adds up. And since you already edited Acts 2 and 3, this should be a breeze where you just fix some minor errors and put the finishing touches on your book. So I hope this helps. And if you're curious about other strategies for editing, I will link some of my previous videos on the subject in the description below. Question of the day: what gives you the most trouble during the editing process? Let us know in the comments section below. Thank you guys for watching. If you want to support the channel, please pick up a copy of either one of my novels. Also, be sure to check out my other videos. Hit the like and subscribe buttons for me. Share this video with a friend. And as always, remember to keep on writing.